a lot. If you want to pursue a career in foreign affairs, which I encourage everyone to consider if it strikes their fancy, how does language and cultural knowledge play into your analysis?
Yes, no, I love this question, and I'm really glad we're going to dig into it a little bit. So maybe I'll back up a tiny bit first, and then go into a little bit of why and how and what ways can be helpful and important. So first off, whenever I do these career panels and I talk to NextGen or help guide NextGen through their DC experience, I really encourage people to find a spark. And that can be a spark within IR, that can be a spark in a different space in IR international relations, or it could be a different space that you bring into a foreign policy analyst. And so for some people, that spark might be trade and commerce, that spark might be maybe sports and diplomacy. And in my case, for me, the spark was language. So I really came into this field coming from a background. There was a brief time in my experience where I thought I would be a linguist by trade, and then transferred over into the international studies, and just I couldn't, I never went back fully. But I really encourage language because it brings you closer to your research space and to the people who matter in the region. So oftentimes when we sit on, this side of the globe, we have a tendency to think about and pontificate about what it is in other spaces. And there's a bit of a distance that occurs not only geographically, but also culturally and linguistically. And by having some language skills, even if it's enough to be able to say hello and thank you while you're in the region, a lot of places really see that as an effort that you're making to connect. And when you connect, that opens doors and opportunities to learn deeper than just what you can read in a book. And so I really recommend for anybody who's interested in the space to learn a little bit of the language. This could be a crash course. There's so many great programs, CLS, a critical language training, Boren, if you really want to commit to the government space, Fulbright programs as well. And so I encourage people to look for some of those scholarships because you can receive scholarships and funding specifically for you to learn a foreign language, and in often cases to learn it in country. Also think Middlebury as well, which is in Vermont, and they do an immersion program. So there's some great opportunities there.
So if I had to give a piece of advice, I'd say be open-minded. You might think that your career is heading in one direction or that your interests are aligned in one way. And if you open your mind to another possibility, something that's another region or something cross-cutting, Mark at the WABA Institute, you do a great job on strategic competition across a number of different topics. At Wilson, we have programs on maternal health, on the environment, on technology. And every time I talk to someone from a cross-cutting program, I find another area of interest that I think, wow, if I want to take my career down this road, I could totally see myself going there. So I'd say you're all relatively young, bright futures ahead of you in undergrad. Just stay open-minded. Don't close yourself off from any future paths, and don't be afraid to jump and chase down something that interests you.
Amen. But your point about finding something and kind of being open to possibilities, one of the things I find people do is you're writing these term papers every semester and you're writing here and you might, submit that and move on. But oftentimes if you go back and take a look at some of those projects that you're working on in the academic space, you might see a thread of consistency that you didn't realize was there. So in my case, I did a lot on nuclear diplomacy, but then I also started finding myself writing nuclear energy. And then because I had that in mind and I noticed that there was a program happening down in Daejeon, so it was at the Science and Technology Hub of Korea, opportunity to be a graduate fellow specifically on nuclear security and energy, I had it in my mind as something to jump for. And so I think that really is exactly what you were talking about finding those paths, but being open to something that, I'm not a climate specialist, but this was something interesting. So
pace. But one thing I would say is that the foreign policy career path can be kind of difficult, unclear at times, what your next step is. But don't lose that spark, don't lose that drive. I still love history. I read history every time I'm on a plane. I still love to, learn more about China and Chinese language, and that really does still drive me. And so I think you have to have a passion, and it has to be something that drives you and makes you interested. And so I think that's what I would say is just really, one, stick to it and keep going, even if it's hard. And then two, really focus in on what drives you.